Hello everybody, welcome to a new video of Baldur's Gate 3. In this episode, I'm gonna share my Evocation School Wizard build and some tips for this school of magic and what kind of fun you can have in and out of combat with such a character. In the world of D&D, the Evocation School is the magic of guiding and sculpting natural forces, be it lightning, fire, frost, wind, or things like light. Of course, the most apparent way to use it is to destroy things, but that's not all of it. For example, the Evocation cantrip Light is for illumination. But still, the Evocation School has the most and strongest damage spells. It's pretty straightforward. I think it's the most beginner-friendly school. As a wizard specializing in the Evocation School, you are the most reliable damage dealer in the game. At level 2, you get the ability Sculpt Spells. With this, your Evocation AoE spells don't hurt your allies. At level 6, you get the ability Potent Cantrip. With this, enemies cannot completely evade your DC damage cantrips. Even if they succeed a saving throw, they still take half the damage. This works on two cantrips, Poison Spray, which deals the highest damage among all cantrips, but it's a semi-melee cantrip which I don't recommend for this build. The other one is Acid Splash, which deals the lowest damage among all cantrips, but is the only AoE cantrip. This is a conjuration cantrip, not an evocation cantrip, so your allies in the area take damage too. As a result, I don't recommend this one as well. So in conclusion, your second school ability is not really useful, but fortunately, the other two abilities are really good. At level 10, you get the ability Empowered Evocation. With this, you add your intelligence modifier to the damage rolls of your evocation spells. This significantly increases your damage to an extent that no other mage can compare. It doesn't just add modifier once to a spell, it adds it once to every attack of the spell. So, pair it with the Magic Missile spell, you deal tons of extra damage. So this build I made is a monoclass evoker that excels at dealing massive and reliable damage. The core spell of this build is the level 1 evocation spell, Magic Missile. This spell shoots individual missiles that cannot miss. The only ways to defend against it are the Shield spell, or Force Damage Immunity, or the Abjuration Wizard's Arcane Ward, which are all very rare on the enemy side. Each of the missiles counts as a single attack. So, each of them triggers your Empowered Evocation ability once. If you have a maximum 20 intelligence, that's a solid 5 damage for each missile. Besides, each of them also triggers all your passive abilities separately. So, if you have effects that trigger when landing a hit, they can be scaled up to the sky by Magic Missile. These are the kind of items you should be searching for this build. With all this build is really efficient at taking out a single difficult enemy real quick. Let me show a little calculation here. On average, each missile deals 3.5 damage, and if I cast the Magic Missile with the level 4 spell slot, that's 6 missiles. In total, they deal around 21 damage. And the Empowered Evocation ability adds 5 damage to each missile, that's 13 more damage in total. And my Quarterstaff's passive triggers 6 times, dealing on average 14 more damage. My Necklace's passive triggers 6 times and deals 4 more damage. And I have a ring that deals 2 more damage with every missile, so in total that's 12 more damage. All this summed up, it's 81 damage on average that cannot miss with merely a level 4 spell slot. And if I drink the Haste Potion, I can do this twice in the first turn, dealing on average 162 solid damage. That's enough to one-shot some bosses. No other mages can deal single target damage as efficiently as this. The Evocation Wizard is the best damage dealer in the game. Because of this, I recommend you store all your haste potions on this Evocation Wizard. Nobody can make more use of them. Aside from Magic Missile, your AoE damage is also the best in the game. Though your Empowered Evocation extra damage only adds once to your AoE spells, but they add on every target, which is still a lot. And you don't hurt your allies, so you can always cast an AoE when you need to. So this build is pretty simple. You deal damage, you deal a lot of damage really fast. When originally allocating ability scores, we give the major bonus to intelligence and bring it all the way up to 17, which is the highest possible for now. We'll eventually get it to 20. This is to maximize our extra damage with magic missile and DC of our AoE damage spells. Then we give the minor bonus to dexterity and bring it to 16. This is your second most important ability. It increases your AC, making you less likely to be hit. It also increases your initiative roll, making you more likely to act before your enemies. Then we forego 2 strength and 2 charisma to bring constitution to 14, boosting our survivability. We leave wisdom unchanged at 10 to get as much mental protection as we can get as possible. And because we are a wizard, we have proficiency bonus for wisdom saving throws, which is +2 for now and will eventually become +4 at level 9. So our effective wisdom is actually higher than 10 when making saving throws. For the cantrips, we choose 3 damage cantrips to deal damage when we don't have enough spell slot. Firebolt, which is fire damage and deals the highest damage among the ranged cantrips. Ray of Frost, which deals cold damage. It deals lower damage but can reduce the enemy's movement speed. Shocking Grasp, this is a melee attack that deals lightning damage. It has an advantage on enemies with metal armor, and if you land the hit, the enemy can no longer use reaction anymore, and you can walk away safely without getting an opportunity attack. For the starting spells, first, we need Mage Armor, a must-have for any wizard who doesn't wear armor. It sets your AC to 13, which is already higher than most light armors. You only need to cast it once each day, and it doesn't require concentration. It will last until long rest, or until you equip an armor, or until you remove it from your prepared spells. Then the second, Shield, another must-have for any wizard build. It's a reaction that gives you another 5 AC when you need it, making you harder to be hit. Remember to untoggle your opportunity attack, in case you waste your reaction on that and can't cast your protection reactions. Then Find Familiar. This allows you to summon a creature into your party to help with combat and exploring. Once summoned, they'll be there until their hit points get reduced to 0. It's a ritual spell, which means if you cast it outside of combat, it doesn't consume your spell slot. It's free. And summon spells don't need to stay prepared once the creature is summoned. Then, Long Strider, which I think is a must-have for any party. It increases the target's moving distance for the whole day without concentration as long as the spell is still prepared. And it's a ritual spell, so every morning you can cast it on yourself, on your whole party, and on all the creatures you summoned. And everybody moves faster that day. Then our ultimate damage spell, Magic Missile. But in the early game we usually don't use it. First, it's because we don't have many spell slots. Second, because we don't have any passive to scale with it yet. So instead of Magic Missile, we use Witch Bolt. This spell is really an economical way to deal damage in the early game. Once you hit an enemy with it, you can keep dealing damage to that enemy each turn, until you lose your concentration on this spell. You can hide to the far back end once you have the connection, but it's only for the early game, because this spell's scaling is really bad. When you upcast it, you only increase the first turn's damage. The later damage are still as low as they are in the early game. Okay, now let's talk about the leveling strategy, when to learn what, and what you can do in different stages of the game. At level 2, we get to choose into the Evocation School, and get our first special school ability, Sculpt Spells. Now, your AoE evocation spells don't hurt your allies. So we take this chance to learn an AoE spell, Thunder Wave. This spell can push the enemies away, which is quite useful if multiple enemies somehow get into close range of you, and you can use it to move some heavy objects outside of combat. For the other vacancy, I recommend Enhanced Leap. This gives your party more freedom when exploring the map. It's a ritual spell, and it's almost always used outside of combat, so it's almost always free. Then, at level 3, you get to learn the spell See Invisibility. This is one of the best abilities of a wizard. It lasts a whole day and doesn't need concentration, but you do need to keep it prepared. Besides this, I take the chance to learn Feather Fall. This spell combined with Enhanced Leap further boosts your freedom when exploring. It's a ritual spell too. Then at level 4, we get to choose our first feat. Here we choose Resilient Intelligence to increase our intelligence to 18 and thus increase our casting ability by 1. At this level, I recommend learning the spell Misty Step. It is useful both inside and outside of combat by teleporting for quite a distance. I also recommend learning Knock. This spell can unlock any lock, no matter its difficulty class, unless the story forbids it. Then at level 5, we get to learn our best AoE damage spell, Fireball. It's not the strongest nor the largest, but it's the most convenient one throughout the game. At this level, we also get to learn a powerful spell that every mage should learn, Counter Spell. This allows you to completely negate an enemy spell as a reaction. Counter Spell can negate any spell whose level is not higher than the spell slot you spent. If the spell's level is higher, you still get a chance to negate it, but you need to make an ability check. And since you have high intelligence, you are rather easy to succeed in that check. Then at level 6, we can take the chance to learn Lightning Bolt as an alternative to Fireball, in case we meet enemies that are resistant or immune to fire damage. At level 7, we can learn the spell Conjure Minor Elemental to summon another unit for your party, which is recommended for any mage build. And we have one more prepare slot for a new AoE damage spell, Ice Storm. This spell deals bludgeoning and cold damage in a large area and renders the terrain into ice surface. Units walking on the ice surface would fall prone unless they succeed a dexterity saving throw. You don't deal damage to your allies with this spell, but they will be affected by the ice surface. This needs to be kept in mind. Then at level 8, we can choose our second feat. Here we choose Ability Improvement to increase our intelligence to 20, the cap, maximizing our casting ability. At this level, we can take the chance to learn the evocation spell Wall of Fire. You can cover a pretty large area with this spell. Once cast, it will stay there burning things as long as you still maintain concentration. Its first impact already deals nice damage, so even if the enemies don't walk into it again, it's still worth using. Then at level 9, we can learn the spell Conjure Elemental to summon a stronger unit for our party. Then at level 10, we get our final special school ability Empowered Evocation. Now, the damage of our magic missile scales up right to the sky. Then at level 11, we can learn 2 nice evocation AoE spells. Wall of Ice is pretty much like Wall of Fire, but much stronger and deals cold damage. Sunbeam, it deals nice radiant damage, and you can keep using it for 10 turns without further spending spell slots, as long as you still maintain concentration on it. At this level, we can also upcast the Conjure Elemental spell to summon the strongest units we can summon for our party. Both the 2 spells and the summoning are level 6 spells and use a level 6 slot. You only have one level 6 slot, and your recharge ability cannot recharge level 6 slot. Normally, this slot is more useful to upcast the Conjure Elemental, but if you can find something in the game that allows you to recharge the level 6 slot, you can have both the summoning and one-shot of a level 6 spell. Finally, at level 12, we can choose our final feat. Here, we choose Spell Sniper. It allows you to learn a new cantrip, and we choose Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast can serve as a weak substitute for Magic Missile when you run out of spell slots, or when you want to save spell slots. At this point, your Eldritch Blast shoots 3 beams each time. All the beams have extra damage from your Empowered Evocation and can trigger all your passive abilities once. Okay, we have talked about how good this build is. Now let's talk about its weaknesses. The most obvious weakness of an evocation wizard is you burn too fast. Nearly all your spells are one-shot. You deal damage with it for once and the spell slot is spent. You have a few economical damage spells, but their damage is much lower than the one-shot spells, so you can't always function at max power in every fight. You need to save your real damage for the really tough battles. The other thing is, the Evocation Wizard is the least useful wizard outside of combat. Of course, you can learn those utility spells, but you need to save your spell slots to deal damage. It's not a good idea to use them for utility. because without the damages, there is no point in using an evocation wizard. And finally, you are always exposed to the enemy's attacks, and you are not very tanky, so it's pretty dangerous for you on the battlefield. And that is everything about this Evocation School Wizard build. Hope you like it. And if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.